Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. Fats Domino was born in Louisiana on the 26th of February 1928 to a musical family. He enjoyed and was heavily influenced by the vibrant jazz and blues scenes of New Orleans in the 1940s. Credited as one of the pioneers of rock and roll, his music incorporated elements of boogie-woogie, R&B and traditional New Orleans jazz, creating a sound that was both innovative and accessible. Joining me to discuss the music and legacy of Fats Domino is my co-host, Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, man. I hope everyone's doing well.
Good, yeah. Welcome back to the show. As always, we start off with the terms and conditions. Make sure if you are here listening to us, you like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, do us a favour and go down, give us a rating. It helps us be seen by more rock and roll fans, sends us up the charts, and makes sure we're listened to by the right people. So thank you for joining us again. Fats Domino.
Yeah.
Where do we start? I mean, should we start with just every time? Let's start with the visual aspect. I look at him and I'm happy.
Exactly.
I get a smile on my face whenever I see him just grace my screen. It's just like, what a happy guy.
I think he is smiling in every picture. Like I don't remember seeing a picture of Fats Domino that he's not smiling. Yeah. It's just like this like beautiful smile. And we were talking about him before we started recording, like how many like rock and roll stars have like the that wild lifestyle and a lot of like controversial things that happen in their lives. And Fats Domino was like a regular family guy from New Orleans, just playing his music, and it's good to have people like him in the music industry, isn't it? And to know that people like him existed and contributed to music.
Because the rock and roll world was quite wild, wasn't it? Don't really want to go through every rock and roller that has a criminal record for whatever reason. But I've read, half of my research was everyone saying how much of a lovely guy Fats Domino is. Humble, unpretentious, down to earth. Those are the kinds of words that people are using to describe him. So, yeah, what a guy. I mean, you can't just look at that little face and it just makes you so happy, doesn't he? It's because he's got a little baby face, isn't it? It's like
maybe that's what it is.
Yeah,
he always looked like a baby until even at
he's obviously a big, strong man, but he's got a little baby face with that little smile that you just can't help but look at and just bring joy to your day. But anyway, so what we're going to do is we've given you a companion album to listen to along this episode, and this is called The Best of Fats Domino, which really literally has all of his hits in it. We've put it in the episode playlist, so as usual for new listeners, each episode we do has a companion playlist so that you can listen to the music that we listened to when we were doing our prep and research for the episode. Scroll down, it's in the show notes, and you can listen along with us. But yeah, what we're doing really this time is it's more of just a quick episode about the man himself, the music, the legacy, what he was like, his background. So yeah, it's a bit of a different one from our usual album ones.
It's got to be because he released more singles than albums, isn't it? At the time, singles were the main thing for record labels, so they would push for the single to be promoted rather than a whole album. So he was a hit maker, so he was focused on releasing those singles one after another. And
because it was odd, it was odd back then to release an album full of like a 10-song album. For example, what did we do a few episodes ago? We did Here's Little Richard, which was an unusual occasion because it was just a standalone album, like 12 to 14
that's got
songs.
all the hits.
No, you're right, but it wasn't like a compilation. It was an album that was released, which is quite unusual for those times when you think about how many hits Elvis released and Fats Domino and everything. But yeah, anyway, right, a little bit of background. I know Felipe's apparently got some cool stories about Fats Domino, but just some of the little bits I did. As I mentioned, he was born into a very musical family, and by the age of, I think he had a brother that played jazz guitar, and he taught music theory to Fats Domino. And at 14 years old, he was going around playing the bars and pubs in New Orleans and playing the piano and doing his thing.
Well, that's at the age of 14 is when he started playing professionally. He was already performing live and singing and playing piano at the age of 10.
Right, you sound like you've got this, so you take us away.
No, he started playing at the age of 7. I think his brother-in-law introduced him to piano and into the New Orleans live music scene. And, started playing at the age of 7. By, at the age of 10, he was already playing live and performing. And then when he was 14, he quit school to focus entirely on his music. So,
wow.
Quite early in life, isn't it?
Yeah. So career-wise, I mean, as you said, 14 years old. So born in 1928, so that would have been 1942 that he sort of moved professionally. 7 years later is when his career took off with the song "The Fat Man," isn't it?
Yeah.
Did you have anything to expand on?
Well, the thing is, before his solo career, he was playing piano for other musicians. So he played with, I don't want to get the name wrong. He played piano for Billy Diamond, so who was a bassist and band leader in New Orleans. And Billy was the guy who gave him his nickname. So he said he got married and put on some weight, and he looked like another musician called Fats Waller. So he was like, I'm going to call you Fats Domino from now on, because it's like it's easy to memorize than your name. And then he became Fats Domino. He liked the joke, and he liked the idea of being Fats Domino, and he used that in his first single. So he was already well known as a piano player, as a band member, but then he became a solo act. And he had, by 1949, he had a good following, like a local following. And then when he put out his first single, "The Fat Man," that was a total hit, and his career took off. And most of his hits were recorded around during the 50s and early 60s. So most of the relevant songs he wrote and recorded were done around that short period of time. Although he kept playing until I think until he died in 2017.
Oh yeah, well he kept pumping out hits throughout the 50s and 60s, to be honest. But I've got 2 songs or 3 songs that were written that. 4 that were written by him that kind of sort of establish a little timeline. So 1949 was "The Fat Man," which was his sort of breakthrough single that got people knowing who he is. Now that song, "The Fat Man," sold just checking I got it right, sold 1 million copies in 4 years.
That's insane.
That seems nuts to me. In 1949, 1 million copies in 4 years. That says something about the music you've released. Going Home in 1952 and Please Don't Leave Me in 1953 kind of really got him, established his presence in this jazz, blues, rock and roll world. And then Ain't That a Shame in 1955 was the song that took him to the next level, because it reached number 10 in the Billboard charts. So they're all great songs, and there's many more songs done in between those, but those are the 4 that kind of sort of place nice little markers in the timeline of Fats Domino. 1 million copies. I still can't believe it. It's like
of
1 million copies in 4 years in 1949.
Yeah, it's
unbelievable.
Yeah, exactly. From 49 to 53. So it's insane for that time, and established his name, and also made him a big influence on every young boy or girl who's like trying to get into rock music. And like just to mention a few names, he was a major influence for John Lennon and Paul McCartney, for Elvis, and for Neil Young. Even Jimmy Cliff and Bob Marley mentioned him as one of their like major influences. It's not like,
I think that's amazing when you think of how different all of those artists are. You've got the Beatles that are like different. A rock pop. You've got Elvis, which is rock and roll, and you've got Bob Marley and Jimmy Cliff, who are reggae artists. Yet all of them heard something they could take influence from.
And if someone has any doubts about the genius of Fats Domino, Little Richard called him the greatest entertainer ever. So that's from Little Richard, right? Who's a great entertainer. And Elvis, called by many people the king of rock and roll, said Fats Domino is the real king of rock and roll. So
I think
you don't need anything else to be convinced that this man is the best of the best.
Well, that's a good segue into talking about his music and his musical style. So I wanted to address the style because it's funny. We have so many innovators and pioneers of rock and roll. We've got Little Richard, we've got Elvis did some parts of it. You've got Jerry Lee Lewis, who was a bit later on, but he still played a part. Yeah, when I did the research for this episode, I couldn't help but thinking that they all sound so different. And for me, Fats Domino is, how can I put this? He's almost like it's almost like his music is pre-rock and roll. It doesn't sound heavy enough to be classed as rock and roll.
Rock and roll wasn't a thing when he started.
Exactly. No, that's my point. But it's like, what am I trying to say? That Black Sabbath in 1970 started heavy metal, but in the years before, you've got bands like Blue Cheer, Deep Purple, who were making heavy music, but under a hard rock banner.
Yeah.
I feel like Fats Domino's early stuff it's pre-rock and roll.
Yeah.
But yet when I hear it, I still say it's so obviously rock and roll. I know I'm being a hypocrite, but does it make sense what I'm saying?
Oh, it does.
Like, he sounds like he's a little earlier than Little Richard and Elvis, but it still works in the overall umbrella of rock and roll.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, there's a big argument about who is the father of rock and roll, or the first rock and roll artist. A lot of people consider him the first one. Some people say it's Bo Diddley, because like it's a fine line between blues and rock, isn't it? It's difficult. It's really difficult to figure out what is blues or rock and roll by that time. So if you listen to Bo Diddley, who also like was releasing mainly singles, not albums, and his albums were compilations of singles. So that is it. The rhythm sounds more like what we call rock and roll nowadays, and it wasn't a thing at the time. But Fats Domino did that even earlier. So that is the point. And when you listen to the Fat Man, his first single, the vibe is rock and roll. So I think it's really hard to go like technical about this and analyze the theory behind it and try to define what is rock and roll based on music theory. Yes. Right? Because he's got boogie-woogie, he's got R&B, he's got jazz and blues and country. It's all mixed up. And so just mixing all those elements makes you a rock and roll artist, I would say. And he was doing all of that before many other people were doing so. And
I love that sort of when you look at these, when you take a look at these rock and roll pioneers, it's fantastic because you can almost see the if you look at it as like a maths equation, you can almost see the formula that went in. With Elvis, it was gospel plus blues plus country plus boogie. With Fat, it's jazz plus boogie-woogie. You know, I love how but you can hear it as well. You can hear that there's no jazz in Elvis. And there's no country in Fats. It's just brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, but the thing is, like when you consider that from Chuck Berry onwards, rock and roll's guitar. So you have Chuck Berry, and then you obviously have the Beatles and have everyone that comes after that. But and we still relate rock and roll to guitar. If you put an image of a Gibson guitar and say what kind of music does that make you think of, people are going to say rock music. And but early rock and roll is piano. So when you think about Little Richard and Fats Domino, that's piano. And the whole attitude, the whole rhythm, the whole vibe, the whole style comes out of his piano playing, you know. And he's got that really cool rhythm on the left hand and amazing melodies and solos played by his right hand. So he made, I would dare to say, although the band and everything else sounds great, if you remove everything and only listen to his vocals and the piano, it is still rock and roll.
Do you know what? I'm going to disagree with you because
I love that.
Yeah, well, and we don't disagree often, do we?
Yeah.
I think, well, actually, do you know what? If you're to remove everything except the vocals and piano, the point I was going to make is compared to someone like Little Richard, Bo Diddley, Elvis, Chuck Berry, their vocals are eccentric. They're shouting. That Little Richard screaming. You got Elvis doing his little the rhythmic stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas Fats is so soft and warm. It's inviting. It's relaxing. It's conversational.
Yeah.
It's just that's what struck me most about the
smooth,
music,
isn't it?
That's what struck me most about listening to him in the atmosphere of a rock and roll pioneer. Is that you think, what does he have what doesn't he have that the others do? And he doesn't have any aggression in his voice. He doesn't have any rhythm in his vocals. The rhythm's definitely in his hands.
But how about that contrast between the piano and the vocals? Because he's like playing heavily on the piano, and the piano is like a drum kit for him. It's hitting it really hard, and then the vocals are so smooth on top of that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a great comedy. You would think there's two different people doing that. It's a piano player and a singer.
Absolutely, but his piano style. Let's talk about that for a second, because it is just this out and out boogie woogie piano where you've got this sort of repetitive left hand bass pattern going on, with his right hand playing sort of syncopated melodies, improvisational, and I think that really obviously comes from the New Orleans jazz scene, doesn't it? And I suppose elements of blues as well. But yeah, my God, if you isolate each instrument in Fats Domino's music, you could come to several different conclusions. You could hear the piano and be like, oh, well, this is country. You could hear the vocals and be like, oh, this is soft pop or blues or something. It's just amazing. But when you bring it all together, it's just rock and roll.
Well, that's why, that's why he is considered the the guy who actually created rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I would say, he deserves that title,
moniker. Yeah, he definitely,
And also like the commitment to music above everything else. It wasn't about fame, it wasn't about money, it wasn't about being recognized as one of the greatest. He just wanted to play his piano and sing and have a good time, and that energy is passed on to us when we listen to his music.
Oh God, of course, yeah. And so talking about, we mentioned about obviously him being like a rock and roll pioneer. Some of the stuff that sort of historians and music critics can genuinely look back on and say this is what he did. Obviously, you've got the hybrid of genres. I mentioned that earlier. Elvis had a set of styles that he turned into rock and roll. Bo Diddley had another set, and Fats had another set. But I thought what was quite important here, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this, is the incorporation of the backbeat and up-tempo songs. Because if I'm not mistaken, the emphasis of beats on blues music prior to this would have been on 1 and 3.
But, you could argue that, yes, because the early blues stuff that doesn't have the drum kit as like a main instrument.
So just for listeners, when we're talking, there's a bit of music theory here. When we're talking about the emphasis on a beat, when you count bars, your beats, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. If you listen to heavy metal, it emphasizes beat 1 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. But jazz and rock and roll emphasize the 2 and 4. 1, 2.
And modern pop music has this, we call it the backbeat, the 2 and 4 being like played louder or more evident than everything else in the bar.
Sorry, man, please.
But this is like it's normally where people should clap their hands. I said should because most people clap on 1 and 3, which is really annoying. But anyways, when you hear the snare drum, the 2 and 4, that is that's commonplace in modern pop music and modern rock music. But
is it for people like Fats?
And he wasn't so evident until the pioneers of rock and roll like him. One of the there's a song, I don't know if you can find the year the song is being recorded, man. You have quick access to everything there. I know there's a song, I'm Ready. I'm Ready is
by Fats,
it's a really good example of rock and roll because it's a straight rock and roll groove. It's not a shuffle like a swing feel like jazz and blues. And you have the hand claps on top of the beat, and it sounds louder than the actual drums in the song. And that's a formula that the Beatles used a lot, having hand claps and percussion louder than the drums, louder than everything else. Did you find the year?
But Fats Domino's was 1959.
59. So that's like still really early in rock and roll history.
Well, Muddy Waters wrote it. Oh, no, Muddy Waters, I think he wrote it in 54. So 4 years later, Fats Domino covered it in 59.
Yeah, so if you listen to his version of it, it's got you have the hand claps really loud in the mix, and that's a formula that's been used after that like a million times by other bands.
It is track 11 in that Best of Fats Domino album. So any song we mention will be in the playlist, as I mentioned. One I'm going to add quickly is you mentioned about Beatles being a massive influence, or Fats being a massive influence for the Beatles. I believe it is well known that the song Lady Madonna is a direct influence from Fats Domino. Paul McCartney, I believe, has come out and said, I wrote this based on Fats Domino's music. So that's
you got the boogie-woogie piano, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, So the other thing that I think is important to talk about the innovation and what he did is the use of his full band. Because in that time, so the late 40s, obviously, when you hear Elvis doing his, I mean, Elvis was a little later, but it's a very sparse band, Elvis's band. We spoke about it, didn't we? It was like a four-piece, like a very, very...
Well, he was playing acoustic, and they had double bass and drums.
Bass and electric, but straight away in early Fats Domino music, we're hearing the horns, and that has to be an obvious takeaway from the jazz scene that he was influenced by. But the other thing I read as well is that he, and this will be, we can go into this a bit in another section, is he had a stable and consistent band for a long time. Very few members left. It wasn't like Elvis, who, you know, had a band and then he went on tour and came back and there was another band and the studio decided that for this single it would be this band. Apparently Fats Domino used a consistent, solid band of the same sort of people.
Chuck Berry, to save money, he would use a different band in every country he was touring. So
yeah, it's not that clever.
Yeah. But so interesting to know that Fats Domino was loyal to his musicians and kept the band together. Actually, that helps to shape the sound of your music, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, because you and me know how many projects have we been in together that when you stay in a project for a long time, you start to understand what the artist or the lead singer or the guitarist wants to do with the music, and as you get to know that person, you sort of shape your playing around it. Yeah. Instead of just turning up to a gig saying play this please, you learn to understand what the artist wants.
It's like the band becomes an extension of the artist's character.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Excellent. Right, well, I think we've covered all the musical stuff, really. You said you had a story you wanted to tell?
Oh, no, there's an interesting story about, was the hurricane in New Orleans in, when was that?
Go on, you tell the story, I'll look for you.
Yeah, because that was a hurricane that pretty much destroyed the whole city, because they...
Could it be 47?
No, it's later on.
Later?
Yeah. I mean, more recently, you know.
Okay. Go on, you carry on. I'll find it for you.
Yeah, so that was...
You don't mean Katrina?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 2005.
That's the one, wasn't it?
Yeah,
2005. Yeah. So, so that, you know, that was a disaster for New Orleans, wasn't it? And his neighborhood was really affected by flood during that hurricane and everything. And they've managed to save him immediately, but the piano couldn't be saved. So he had this beautiful white piano that was with him for years, and they couldn't save it. So it was underwater for like a few days, I guess, and they've managed to recover it. And a lot of people, including Paul McCartney, donated money to restore the piano. Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
It melts my heart, man.
It's I think it's in a museum or something. I don't know where it is, the piano, but it's in a museum or something like that. I think, or in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, I guess. I don't know. I'm not going to say where it is because I don't know. But yeah, but it's interesting. Like, so he was, you know, still I think he was still performing, and he lived a long and happy life. It's good to say that about someone in rock music.
I know, yeah. Fantastic stuff. Right, so I think that nicely sums up what the music of Fats Domino, the legacy he's kind of left, who he's influenced, what he did towards the pioneering of rock and roll. What we're going to do now is myself and Felipe have both chosen a song that we want to just talk about. I think it's not going to be long, it's just going to take a few minutes, but yeah, we're just going to talk about a song that our favourite one of Fats Domino and why we like it and how it links to everything we've said. So do you want to kick off?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to start from the first single that we already talked about, the Fat Man. I think this song is so rock and roll and so great, and it's my favourite Fats Domino song for a million reasons. First, because it describes himself, and there's like about 45 seconds of piano playing. There's more instruments in the background, but the mix and the recording is so poor you can barely hear anything. But those 45 seconds of piano, his whole style and legacy, it's all in there. You know, the strong bass lines on the piano and the melodies, and it's just like, it's so infectious from the beginning, really groovy, really steady. And when he starts singing, I love the lyrics, like, they call me the fat man because I weigh 200 pounds. All the girls, they love me because I know my way around. And it's like, yeah, I'm fat. I don't give a fuck. Everyone loves me. God, and it's so cool. And it's so cool. And then he finishes the first, it's only about 2 verses, and he finishes singing, and he starts doing a vocal solo, just saying wah, wah, wah. Like,
I love that part.
It is just like, how rock and roll is that?
He could have done anything. He could have used a harmonica. Frank Zappa uses the kazoo. Yeah. But he just wow, wow, wow. Why not? Like, why the hell not?
There's a vocal solo. Like, and after that solo, it comes another piano solo, and he's just smashing it.
Unbelievable.
And it's great. It's so infectious. You just want to dance to it. So I totally recommend that song. If you never heard of Fats Domino, you wanna listen to him. Start from the first hit, the first single, The Fat Man. Great song.
Start there.
How about you, man? What's your favorite?
So I've gone for Blueberry Hill because it is the song that got me into Fats Domino, and is it too much of a stretch to say it's the song that got me into rock and roll? Probably not. It probably is the song. Now, what I love about it is, You've got that blues pattern and rhythm in the left hand, the doom, doom. But then in the intro, the melody in the right hand, he's just messing around like like just doing the melody, very boogie-woogie style, very improvisational. The soft, warm voice, the simplistic melodies, and I think, as I said already, the horns. He uses them so well because in a song where you're in control of the rhythm and you've got the band looking after the chords, it's so easy to put a saxophone or a trumpet in there and say, go on, take the spotlight. But the horns, all they do is just gentle swells. Listen to it. Sometimes you can't even hear it. Just gentle swells behind the vocals. I love that there's no shuffle in the drums, but the song swings, doesn't it?
Yeah,
but there's no shuffle in the drums, which is where the shuffle should be.
Interesting.
But my favourite part of it, and this is what I don't think it's a secret. You and me have discussed it. I don't mind the blues. I think the blues is great. It's such an important part of music. It's so vital, but it's not my favourite genre. I find it a little bit repetitive in places. No need to go on.
You've been listening to the wrong blues stuff, man.
Oh, there's an argument for that. There's an argument for that. But for me, there's a part in Blueberry Hill where it goes off of the blues progression, and there's a minor chord.
There's a bridge. Where it goes, there's a really cool bridge.
But all of the vows, and there's like a minor chord comes in. It goes, we made, and it's like this tension's just there. Whatever to be, and then it releases. Oh, we're apart, and it just falls so beautifully. And I just thought, in that little chorus, you've got everything. You've got the horns playing that blue note or the dissonant note, whichever one it is. You've got that minor chord that just deviates away from what we expect with the blues. It's very jazzy, it's very unusual. His soft voice, that bridge part, chorus, whatever you want to call it, is just stunning. And I think, I think it's funny you said this, because we should pick two songs to do, and I was thinking, well, I'm doing Blueberry Hill, and I think Felipe should do the Fat Man, and Felipe was like, I'm going to do the Fat Man. So it's like we've done the most perfect two songs. But yeah, amazing stuff. So I think we've sort of summed up most of the stuff, really. I mean, there's one little section I want to do now, which I want to ask, and I think this is important because it's so easy to lump all these guys in together. Elvis, Little Richard, Bo Diddley, Fats Domino. I wanted to ask, or I did ask myself before I was doing the research, what makes Fats stand out? And the sort of conclusions I came to is that other rock and roll pioneers, they drew from country or straightforward blues, whereas Fats drew in from the jazz, very deep rooted in the jazz and R&B of New Orleans. Piano as a lead instrument, you've already touched on that. The smooth vocal delivery compared to what I was saying about Little Richard, Bo Diddley, who were very raw, energetic, aggressive even to an extent. And this is an important point for me that we didn't mention. Why does Fats' music, why did it last the test of time so long compared to the others? He co-wrote with a gentleman called Dave Bartholomew all the way through the 50s and 60s. And you hear all the time about Elvis's relationship with this songwriter and this producer and how this broke down and that, and the same with Little Richard and Bo Diddley. But Fats found a formula in his band and with this Dave Bartholomew guy that worked. And he stuck with it. And the result is the massive success that he has found. I mean, his music transcends the genre boundaries. You can't, obviously it's rock and roll, but a gospel fan would like it, a blues fan would like it, a jazz fan would like it.
Just good music. I want to say one thing. If anyone who's ever had a 9-to-5 job or a job that you don't like, but you need the money, if you listen to Blue Monday, there's no way you're not going to relate to that. And it's like, the whole thing, the whole week is a mess. You don't want to do any of that. And then Saturday, you're having a good time, and you have a headache on Sunday. It's just like, and it's worth it because it does his music, lyrically and melodically and everything. It does speak to the common people, and it just brings a good vibe. The thing, we mentioned that line between blues and rock music. Sometimes people talk a lot about chords and melodies and rhythm, but one big element is the lyrics. And Fats Domino's music is mainly like uplifting and happy. So it's not bluesy because there's no, you got to be, you got to feel miserable to sing the blues.
Yeah.
And if you want to sing rock and roll, especially early rock and roll, you got to be having a good time. You're happy about your life, and you're surrounded by friends. Maybe with the same songwriter collaborating with him, same band, the same people around him. Maybe he just felt like he was surrounded by friends. Listen to the song "What a Party," which makes you feel like you are in that party with him and his friends. And
I think from what we've read about him as a person, I think his music reflects that. And obviously, like you said, there are songs that are a bit more mellow and unhappy lyrically.
Yeah, but mainly...
you hear it and you still just think of his fat little face. And I mean that in a lovely way. But you just think of his little face just there with a smile. Honestly, like, I think his music it's a testament and reflection of what everyone has said about him. And he is a true rock and roll icon. And he died in 2017 in Louisiana, where he was born, at a fantastic age of 89.
Wow. Lived a great life and left a great legacy.
It's more than great, bro. I think it's more than great, isn't it? It's historic. It's important. It's monumental.
And I don't know why sometimes when people talk about, I've been, I've listened to a lot of people talk about Chuck Berry and Little Richard, and sometimes I'm like, how about Fats Domino? You need to mention this guy. Rock and roll wouldn't exist as it is without him. Yeah. That's a fact.
Well, this is what I was alluding to earlier. I think if you analyze it musically, I think there may be slightly too much. I'm trying to make a point. I don't even know what point I'm making. There might be slightly too much blues, or slightly too much New Orleans jazz, maybe slightly too much piano for it to sit. It's exactly the same what I said with Sabbath. A lot of people think Deep Purple are a heavy metal band, or played the first heavy metal music, but history tells us 1970 Sabbath did heavy metal, but everyone still knows Deep Purple were kind of doing it very similar before, and I think this is the case with Fats Domino. It is obviously rock and roll, it is obviously a precursor rock and roll, but it just sounds a little lighter than the rock and roll we got from Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and maybe that's because of the piano or something, but undoubtedly, it's not like there's a debate here. He is rock and roll. It's just about how rock and roll, I think, but... Anyway, right, anything else to say, or we good to wrap it up there?
I don't know, I'm just really happy because I can see the pictures of Fats Domino on my background and your background.
Can't stop smiling. He's just sort of happy guy.
Yeah, and always with the piano. Like 9 out of 10 pictures of him is like sitting in front of his piano. Like every time you look at, you go on Google Images and type Fats Domino, you're going to find a piano.
Yeah, do you know what he reminds me of? I'm just looking at photos. It's almost a bit like Oscar Peterson, the jazz pianist, who's just always with a piano.
Exactly.
And always smiling as well, actually.
Always smiling,
Anyway, right, let's call it a day. Thank you again for joining us on the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. I said it at the start, but I will say it again. If you've enjoyed this content, please leave us a comment. Tell us your favourite Fats Domino song, favourite Fats Domino album. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit like so that our video gets shown to other people, and subscribe so that you stay up to date with all of our content and new videos. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, do us a massive favour. It takes 20 seconds of your time, but means the world to us. Scroll down, give us a review, hit 5 stars, write a little comment, and it means we're going to be seen and listened to by more people, because the review you give us sends us up the charts. It says, oh, these guys are apparently good because someone's given them a review. Let's show them to more people, and it would mean it would make the world of difference to us. So we'd appreciate if you did that. But thank you for joining us again, and we'll be back soon.
Yeah, thanks for all the support so far. And if you like not only classic rock or modern rock, if you like rock and roll, early rock and roll, we have a lot of episodes about other rock and roll artists. We've covered Little Richard, Bo Diddley, Elvis, all of that. So listen to those episodes as well. Thanks for being with us. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
I will just add one more thing before I sign off. As Felipe has said, if you're a new listener, we're doing Fats Domino, so 1949, and we go all the way up to Audio Slave in 2006. I think that's the most recent album we've done. We do everything in between. This is the 79th episode. We've got loads of episodes before. Metal, country, pop, rock and roll, blues, it's all there. Go and check it out and stay subscribed to stay up to date with our content. So I'll finish off with the normal thing, which is long live rock and roll. We'll see you soon.